Hi, I'm Denise Ward. I'm the president of the Mamaroneck Harrison Larchmont Bar Association. I'm here today with Judge Christie Derrico. She's running for judicial office here in the state of New York. Christie?
Thank you, Denise.
What position are you running for, Christie?
Well, presently I'm running for Supreme Court in the 9th Judicial District. And to people who are not in the political world, they may not know what is the 9th Judicial District.
Okay.
It comprises Westchester, Rockland, Orange, Putnam, and Dutchess. So it's a 5-county race. It's quite large.
That's a pretty big area and a pretty diverse area as well. Very big shift in demographics over that area, I would think.
Absolutely. During the course of my practices as a young lawyer, I actually worked for a firm in Rockland County, which brought me to all of those courts at one point in time. And you're right, it's a different kettle of fish from being here in Westchester County and us being closer proximity to New York City. It's more of country type courts, which sometimes they're more civil in the way they practice.
I bet you they are. I bet you they are. So are you currently a judge? I introduced you as Judge Derrico. Are you currently a judge?
I am. I was elected in 2010 to the Village of Mamaroneck Justice Court. And for most people can relate to their justice court. Maybe they've gone in with a traffic ticket or a parking ticket, but actually our court covers way more than that. We are presently approximately the 4th busiest court in the county.
Wow.
Yes, they base that on revenue that the court brings in. So sometimes that's not the most accurate barometer, but I can tell you on a criminal day, I might have upwards to 90 criminal cases.
That's amazing.
It is a very busy court. We arraign felons and we keep misdemeanors down to violations. But for the felonies that I bring in on arraignment, I may handle initial hearings before they go up. So I'm running right now on this election with 3 appellate division judges, and when we were talking about this, I was explaining, my court is where it all starts. So
Right.
If there's an error made and it goes up on appeal, it's actually starting in the justice court.
And then being in the village court, that does give you a little bit of a different perspective in terms of being able to handle some of the upper county issues that might be a little bit more small town, I think.
Absolutely, and that's really what I've been. I've been the town judge, and I have handled things. Sometimes they're very serious, as I mentioned. Sometimes you get felonies or domestic disputes. These are very serious, might require a temporary order of protection, but you could have something very low end, what we call maybe an ABC violation with a youngster having an open can of beer, which they shouldn't have, and those are certainly not the things that you're looking to put someone in jail. It might require community service or something to that effect. So it's really been a very well-rounded position, taking me, running the gamut from, as I said, very serious criminal charges all the way down to an eviction or a small claims matter. Our
Right.
jurisdiction in justice court is $3,000 or below. And so I could cover any of these matters.
Right.
I've also had the opportunity to sit in Yonkers City Court. So I've sat in the housing part there and the small claims part there, which is very interesting. Another level,
Right.
going now to a city
More big
which
city.
I believe they're the second busiest in the state, the
believe
second
you're-
largest in the state.
Yes, I believe you're right.
So that's been an experience, and watching how they run things. My early legal career, I started in New York City, so I was very well versed with the courts in the 5 boroughs, housing court included. So it's interesting to me to see how these different courts are run, and I'm taking cues from each one of them, and I factor that in running my court.
Well, this is all good information to know, and I think it's important to the voters to know just how diverse your exposure is to the judicial system. And it's interesting, again, back on the local level, the disputes between neighbors, you have to handle those too. So as a Supreme Court justice in this district, you'd be covering those kind of things too, disputes between landowners, all those kind of things.
Right. The cases that have gotten press out of my court during my 3-year tenure here were, of course, the larger, more serious criminal cases, but the dog bite cases.
Right.
I mean, these are small town issues, but very serious,
Right.
and bring in local laws and local legislation, and they are the things that have gotten a lot of press. People are interested in
And
them.
local people, exactly.
Local
people are
people.
interested. So what accomplishments are you most proud of, Christie? What can you tell us?
Well, at some point in time, you sit and you reflect on everything you've done. I mean, I've had to fill out all these applications to list cases I've decided, trials I've done, and you think, gosh, what have I done in 17 years? It's really, it's more than I realized. But in recent years, I would say I've been, when I came into my position as village justice, As I said, I've practiced for 17 years. I've been a trial attorney. I've been in most courts in the lower part of New York, and I've taken cues from all of those courts, and I tried to implement the good things that I've seen in other systems. When I first took the bench, court starts at 9:30, and when I first came in, everyone arrived at 9:30. So that means constituents and people coming to court are sitting there waiting for their cases to be heard. Court could take 5 hours. And while the judge is on the bench, there are no breaks for the judge. Not that that's relevant, but it looked to me as an inefficient way to run things. So number one, I asked support staff to be there by 9 o'clock so that they could conference their matters. And I'm there usually 8:30, 8:45. I'm available if they need me in the background, if they need a conference or something. But there was no reason that support couldn't be there to get things conferenced so that by 9:30, we're ready to go. The other thing we did was we changed the way we were handling tickets, and that actually has proven more efficient on both ends, both for the officers who have to come to court and for the court personnel and staff to run things more smoothly without minimizing people's rights and making sure that things just run efficiently, which is what people expect from their court.
Well, as a practicing attorney who's had to sit through a number of calendar calls and waiting through traffic court, for example, while you're waiting for your landlord tenant or something like that to get on the calendar to get going, that's a very useful point. And having a judge that's efficient on the bench, I think, is something that's important to all of us because everybody's time is valuable, not just the lawyers, but the constituents as well.
Sometimes waiting is unavoidable, but where it can be made more efficient, you need to audit your system and make sure that it's working properly.
All right. So judicial races, are unique in that, they're run, they cover such a big amount of space, a big amount of area. Why do people need to care about judicial races? Tell me why that's important.
Denise, at the end of the day, once you win your election, a judge is a judge. They're not a Republican judge, they're not a Democrat judge. But unfortunately, the system requires that judges run on political lines. We're allowed to be politically active for 6 months before a race and 6 months after. And that's just the system in the state of New York for the position that I'm running. It was interesting to me to find that there is a huge drop-off from the highest, let's say this election cycle, county executive is the highest position that's being nominated. There can be a 20% drop-off from that line down to the judicial races. People sometimes just skip over it, asking just the question you are, why should I care? I don't know who these judges are, it doesn't affect me. But what I've said to people on this point is we have had national elections decided by our courts. That's an example how something in your life has been decided by the court. You also may have zoning issues in your community that you read about in the newspaper. That's decided by a judge. And these are things that affect your everyday life, and it's important that you have a quality judiciary that's able to give the consideration and time to every case. Every case is unique. You cannot just have this is why judges don't have policy positions on things. I have to have a clear mind. I have to read the law that's applicable. I have to read the case and look at the facts before I come to a conclusion. So these are the reasons people should care about the judicial races, and it can affect them.
Because the judges are still, just because they're the third branch, still means that they're very much a part of the branches of government. Is that what you're telling us?
And that's right. The three branches, the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. At the end of the day, the court's going to decide what may affect you.
Yeah. Well, what we've just talked about has led me to two different questions. So let me first go to this one. How do you feel about the endorsement process? Because we just talked about having to run on a party line. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it does make it difficult. We try, you cannot be political. It's something you just eradicate from the way that you function, and yet you're thrown into this process. I'm running with 3 appellate division judges. The term is 14 years, so they haven't run for office in 14 years. Right. And now all of a sudden you come out of hibernation. Someone equated it to seeing the locusts again, every 18 years. You haven't done anything political for all these years, and then you have to come back out into the process, which is vastly different than it was 14 years ago. A, it becomes a little bit unfair to put the judges in a politicized race. And B, judges want to be judges. They don't want to be politicians, and the system can make them have to be that, putting up signs, taking out ads. So maybe it's something that the legislature would consider in looking at this issue.
Taking a look at, okay. And then let's go back then. Besides, why do we have to care about it? Tell our listeners and our viewers, what does a Supreme Court justice do? I mean, I know I'm the president of the Bar Association, but maybe they don't know.
Right. Well, the Supreme Court is the highest trial court, and there is one court in every county. This, as I mentioned, is a 5-county race. So theoretically, even though I'm a candidate from Westchester County, I may be put in Orange, Rockland, Dutchess for a period of time, any of those counties. And it's not uncommon, as we've seen in our practice, for a judge from another county to come to our county for a period of time, a year, 18 months, sometimes longer. In addition to that, there's different parts. The Supreme Court has the matrimonial part, they have the trial part, they have the tax certiorari part, and as a judge, you can be assigned to that particular part. We do not specialize in the law. We're supposed to theoretically be able to handle anything. We've been educated in various areas, but certainly there are areas that we might be not as strong as others. In all of the interviews I went to in being interviewed by the various bar associations, every single interview brought up, how do you feel about being assigned to matrimonial? Apparently this is where new judges go. And I'm just fine with that because I want to know as many areas of the law as possible. So, I mean, these are really the facets of your Supreme Court. It's not like the magistrate court I'm in now, which many people have interaction with. It's something that you might have interaction with a divorce, an adoption. If you have a lawsuit over $25,000, you're going to Supreme Court. Those are the cases. But surprisingly, when you know people who have gone through, let's say, the matrimonial part for a divorce, they always remember their judge.
Yes, that is very true. That is very true. Even in my practice, I had this judge who, and also guardianship too touches on this area. Also a big area which overlaps a lot with our aging community. The potential of having a guardianship, the issues like fraud, duress, undue influence. Although those belong somewhat to the surrogates court, they also often end up in Supreme, right? Wouldn't you say?
And yes, and the judges sometimes switch. You know, you could have a court that maybe a judge is out on leave for some reason, so they'll assign a judge from Supreme to fill in there. And you just have to pick it up and roll with it. I mean, it's not any different than a lawyer taking on a case that isn't something they've had before. We research it, we figure it out, we see what the applicable law is, and you do your job.
So it would be a lot about thinking it through. I mean, that's
absolutely.
It's really analysis and thinking it through, which is what we've been trained to do.
Yes, that's.
Oh, yeah. Well, obviously, this is an important issue to me because I'm a woman. But tell me, do you know what the percentages are of women in the judiciary? You have any information on this? This is important, I think.
Well, I'm not an expert, but from what I've read, I was really surprised coming out of law school in a time when 50% of law school graduates are women. We're over 50% of the population. I was surprised to read that women rank anywhere from a quarter to maybe 30% of the judiciary, looking at federal and New York State. New York State is not number one in the number of women in the judiciary. I was surprised.
I am surprised too.
Yes, it was interesting, and I will say there are certain circles I go in that the women are in the minority, and you have to brace yourself a little bit to deal with that situation. I fall upon my skills as a soccer coach, where I was definitely in the minority, and I said, I would say, I'm going to advocate for my team. It's not much different. You have to go out there and do your job. But why don't we have equal representation to what's coming out of law school? Why do I see less women in certain areas of practice? I think we have to encourage women, and we never want to say, vote for a woman because she's a woman. We want qualified individuals, but we know enough qualified individuals that can do certain jobs. We want to see them in all those facets.
And why do we want women in these jobs? I mean, not just percentages, but why do we want women in these jobs? What unique skills does being a woman might being a woman bring to the table for our listeners and our viewers?
It is a really, really good question. And as I sit before you, I'm a mother. I have 4 children. I'm married. I live my life dealing with my family. That is a component of who I am as a judge. It doesn't mean I interpret a law any differently. It doesn't mean I read a case any differently, but it certainly factors into how I'm viewing a case, how I'm handling a case. And I think it is important to have that well-roundedness in our representation. I think we can think of other women leaders who have really brought something quality that we've seen in leadership that it's good to have a woman's perspective.
You told me right before we got started that you had to pick your daughter up from soccer, if I'm not mistaken. So, little bit. I think one of the unique skills, and you tell me if you think I'm correct or not, that women bring to the table is the ability to juggle a lot of balls in the air at the same time.
You know, my mom calls it being a fixer, and I am a third-generation women business owner. My grandmother was a caterer, and she started her business in her basement, raised 5 daughters, and then opened a catering facility that's still open today. And my mother owns a computer consulting firm. And juggling,
know that.
yes, not that that helps with any technological questions, but she does have this company, and she's in a category of female business owners. But we do discuss being a juggler, so I'm not sure how I got my skills, whether it was from observation or in my DNA, but there it is. I look at a situation and I employ the skills that my mother and my grandmother used, and my grandfather. It's not limited just to the mothers in my family, but other individuals who own businesses. You know, how can I be a leader? How can I organize this? How can I make it better?
Yeah, which brings me directly to my next question. When you're elected, Christie, what do you want to accomplish on the bench? I mean, you've told us a lot about what you've observed and fixed in your court, in our village courts. But what do you want to accomplish when you become a Supreme Court justice?
First of all, when some of us have had experiences where you make a motion and it might take a long time to get it back or something, to get a decision. And right off the bat, I would say to you, I want to be known for working hard and doing a good job, okay, being efficient. Right now, I'm doing my own research, typing at times my own decisions. It can be very time intensive what I'm doing. But what I'd like to bring to the higher level is, for example, my efforts on the issue of mental health. I had noticed a deficit in the training tools that were offered to magistrate judges, and this is a little tidbit I don't know if you know this. You do not have to be a lawyer to be a magistrate judge. So when I go to training, there are magistrate judges in mostly northern part of the state, western part of the state, that are not lawyers. So those training tools are incredibly important to them to know what they're doing. We've gone to law school, we've taken the bar exam, they haven't. So I looked into the issue of individuals suffering from mental conditions, and I found there really wasn't enough tools. So they've asked me to speak on that in 2014. I will continue to do that whether I'm in office as a Supreme Court justice or if I stay on as a magistrate justice. But it's something that whatever the state needs of me to bring this issue to the forefront, make sure we have the proper tools for judges to utilize in doing their job. That's something that's very important to me. And I also work with interns, and I know other judges have done programs to bring people into the court. I think it's a way that we can get students to feel more comfortable and maybe inspire them to be lawyers. Maybe students, we're talking about diversity, so all different kinds of students, getting them in there saying, you can do this, you can make a goal to become a lawyer or a judge, whatever your right. Future goals are. So these are the little programs that I hope to continue.
I like your thoughts on mental health. As you and I have discussed, my daughter works in a special school with children with some emotional issues. And I think, this is I've learned from myself, from what she's telling me, that this is a serious issue. And I think as a society, we need to be more cognizant. And I think that, having a judge on the bench who realizes how serious and how profound how profoundly mental issues can affect people is a quality we should all be looking for.
And families, and just as you're saying, you became aware of this, so did I. It was something that happened on the bench that I said, okay, what tools are there for me to employ to deal with this? And there weren't enough. Right. And you do, when you are a magistrate judge, you do have family members come in and say, help, I need your help. And at one event I was at, one of the judges said, we're not social workers. And not that I don't disagree with that. That isn't our job to be social workers. But we do have to have the tools to be able to deal with things. Mm-hmm. It's mandated for drug and alcohol cases at times for individuals to have mandatory drug and alcohol treatment. Mm-hmm. I have to read those reports. I have to understand them. I have to know the lingo the doctors are using, so I make sure that this defendant's doing what they're compelled to do.
Absolutely.
Same thing in mental health. So if
And
it's
sometimes with mental health issues, the dysfunction is deep and runs in a, I won't say it doesn't run in the family, that's not what I mean, but the dysfunction is in the family unit as well, and being able to comprehend that and having judges on the bench who recognize it and are willing to address it I think are important to all of us.
In the state mental health part, when you are put into that part, they deal with the whole panel. They have a social worker. They probably have 6 people handling each case, and obviously you can't give that kind of treatment to the entire justice system. It would be way too expensive, but I really saw firsthand how beneficial it was in reducing the rate of recidivism for these individuals and keeping them out of jails and keeping a clean record.
Okay. All right, this is my last question for you, Christie. What makes you uniquely qualified for this job? And tell our voters, why they should vote for you.
Thank you, Denise. First of all, thank you for being here with me today. I really appreciated your time. But in summarizing what it is about what I've done, again, reflecting on everything I've done in my career, whether it's working pro bono for organizations. I incorporated the Hispanic Resource Center. I've worked with children, and I've brought those skills with me to the bench. And I have tried every day when I'm doing my job to rely upon those skills, even the skills that I've learned as a mother, as we discussed. These are not things that I can eradicate from who I am as a person. So I really believe that that skill set is what will make me a better judge. And I intend on, starting in the magistrate court. That was the starter course, getting the opportunity to work as acting in a city court. I'm ready to go to Supreme. And I think that I will work hard for people, and I will give them back what is needed to keep our system, the integrity in our system, and to the integrity of the bench.
Thank you. I think it's a lot for us to hope for. Thank you.
Thank you.